When we look at traditional environmentalism, political ecology, and mainstream politics, we notice an ongoing crisis. We are told that we must protect nature from human society. We see scientists telling us what the cold, hard facts of nature are, and then we see politicians and citizens arguing about what values we should uphold. Latour argues that this entire setup is completely broken. Traditional political ecology has failed because it accepted the old philosophical boundaries given to it by Western traditions. It tried to do politics with nature without realizing that the very concepts of nature and society were explicitly designed to make democracy impossible. In this lecture, we will look at how Latour dismantles this old worldview and how he constructs a new political framework where humans, non humans, sciences, and politics can finally coexist in a true democracy. To understand Latour, we must first understand his critique of Plato's famous allegory of the cave. Western politics has been trapped inside this cave myth for thousands of years. Let us review the story simply. Human beings are chained inside a dark cave, looking at shadows on the wall, mistaking those shadows for reality. These shadows represent human culture, language, politics, and bias. Then, a brave scientist or philosopher breaks free from their chains, walks out of the cave into the bright sun, and sees the true objective, unmediated reality of things. This outside world represents nature. The philosopher then travels back down into the dark cave to tell the ignorant citizens that their political squabbles are meaningless compared to the cold objective truth of the outside world. Latour calls this setup the constitution of the old regime. This old regime deliberately creates a strict divide between two separate worlds: the world of nature, which contains objective facts, silent things, and absolute laws that can only be understood by specialized scientists, and the world of society, which contains subjective values, human speech, passions, biases, and political disagreements. Latour's central insight is that this divide is not a neutral description of reality, it is a political weapon. Every time a society is about to have a democratic debate about its future, an expert can step in from the outside world and say, the laws of nature have spoken, your human opinions do not matter, the debate is closed. This setup paralyzes democracy by using the mute authority of nature to silence the shouting voices of human citizens. Therefore, Latour says, if we want to save our planet and build a true democracy, we must completely abandon the concept of nature as a separate outside realm. This brings us Latour's crucial differentiation between science with a capital S and the sciences in practice. Latour is absolutely not an anti-science thinker. He does not believe that scientific facts are mere social fictions or subjective illusions. He defends the hard work of actual scientific practice against the idealized myth of science with capital S. When we look at the myth of science with a capital S, we see an imaginary process where an isolated expert magically steps outside of human history to grab pure unmediated truths. This myth claims that facts are simply discovered sitting out there in the woods, fully formed. When we look at the actual sciences in practice, the domain of science studies, we see a completely different, much more interesting story. Scientists do not step outside the world, they work inside messy laboratories. They use instruments, gauges, computers, statistics, and peer reviewed journals. They work tirelessly to create a long, fragile chain of references. A climate scientist does not see global warming with their naked eyes, they look at ice core samples, satellites, ocean temperature sensors, and complex computer models. It is through this massive network of equipment and human labor that a silent entity like carbon dioxide is slowly allowed to write its name, send a signal, and speak to us. Scientific facts are real, because they are carefully manufactured by these networks, not because they fell from heaven. Therefore, scientists are not solitary travelers returning from another world. They are vital political actors who design the instruments that allow non human entities to participate in our shared world. Because the old divide, nature and society, has paralyzed our ability to solve ecological crises, Latour proposes a brand new vocabulary. He tells us to stop using the words nature and society altogether. Instead, he introduces the concept of the collective. The collective is a single unified social and material space where two types of actors interact: humans, for example, citizens, politicians, and groups, and non humans, rivers, microbes, ozone layers, electronic chips, birds, and weather systems. Latour calls these non human actors propositions or actants. An actant is anything that modifies a situation or makes a difference in a course of action. A virus is an actant because it can shut down human economies. A river is an actant because it can flood a city or provide electricity. Under the old regime, we treated humans as the only subjects with a voice and non humans as mere objects to be manipulated or studied. Latour's flat ontology completely flattens this hierarchy. We live in a world where humans and non humans are completely entangled in a shared destiny. You cannot separate the human farmer from the soil, the fertilizer, the weather patterns, and the intentional trade laws. They form a single web. Therefore, politics should no longer be defined as the management of human citizens alone. Politics must be redefined as the progressive composition of a common world made of both humans and non humans. How do we actually run a democracy that includes humans and non humans? Latour reimagines the state not as a system of branches, executive, legislative, judicial, but as a new bicameral parliament designed to process the entries of new entities into our own shared world. The first part of this political machine is what we can call the House of Commons, the chamber that answers the question, how many are we? This house has two explicit duties: perplexing and attending. First, perplexing, the intrusion of the unknown. When a new crisis appears, such as a new mad cow disease, a new microplastic pollution, or an unexpected shifting of tectonic plates, the collective must not ignore it. The duty of perplexing means that the collective must remain open to being distributed by new non human voices. We cannot simply use our old laws and old categories to pretend nothing has changed. We must allow our certainties to be shaken. Scientists, activists, and citizens must work together to ask, what is this new entity that is knocking on our door? What is it doing to us? How many new actors are caught up in this problem? Second, attending, that is, checking the witnesses. The duty of attending means taking the time to carefully investigate these new entities. We must check the networks, verify the laboratory instruments, and ensure that the spokespersons representing these non humans are being honest. If a scientist steps forward and says the salmon in this river are dying because of the specific chemical, the collective does not blindly accept this as a cold fact from the outside world, nor do they dismiss it as mere opinion. They attend to it, they look at the fish, they laboratorily test and local fishermen to see how tightly these entities are bound together. The House of Commons ensures that the collective's door is always wide open to new candidates for common existence. Once the House of Commons has gathered all these diverse human and non human actors and thrown the collective into a state of perplexity, we face a dangerous problem. We cannot simply live in total chaos with millions of competing demands. A virus wants to replicate, a human wants to work, a river wants to flow, an oil company wants to drill. This brings us to the second chamber of Latour's parliament, the House of Lords, the chamber that answers the question, how can we live together in a shared home? This house handles the duties of prioritizing and ordering. First, prioritizing, meaning ranking the demands. The collective must make explicit, agonizing political choices. It must rank its values and its actors. In the old regime, this ranking was done secretly by hidden ideologies or by scientific dictate. In Latour's new model, the prioritization must be fully explicit and democratic. We must openly debate which lives are more important to protect right now. Can we compromise between the economic needs of a human society and the ecological needs of a local wetland? No single expert can step forward to end this argument with a shortcut. The collective must collectively choose its priorities and take full responsibility for who is protected and who is pushed aside. Second is ordering, that is, building the common world. The final duty is ordering, which means creating a stable, predictable arrangement of all these accepted actors so that life can go on. This is where laws are written, habits are formed, infrastructure is built. The collective builds a new expanded home where humans and non humans have explicit duties, places, and rights. But notice a critical difference between Latour's ordering and the old regime's laws. This order is never permanent. The collective knows that tomorrow a new entity might arrive at the door of the House of Commons and the entire bicameral process will have to start all over again. Democracy is an endless looping process of expanding and reorganizing our common world. Finally, let us also talk about Latour's unique vision of the political actors who navigate this new world, spokespersons, and his famous concept of the factish. Under Latour's framework, a politician representing human voters and a scientist representing subatomic particles are doing the exact same job. They are acting as spokespersons. Think about a politician. They stand on a stage and speak for millions of silent citizens who cannot all be in the room at once. The politician is always in a fragile position. They might betray their voters or misrepresent them. Now look at a scientist. They stand in front of a computer screen and speak for millions of silent microbes. The scientist is also a spokesperson. They use their laboratory instruments to give a voice to things that do not speak human language. Latour argues that political representation and scientific representation are structurally identical. Both are attempts to speak for an absent crowd. Therefore, we should stop treating science as cold truth and politics as dirty speech. Both are noble, difficult arts of representation that must be kept open to democratic view. Latour introduces a wonderful hybrid word to describe the entities we live with, the factish, a combination of fact and fetish. In the old regime, people thought that if something was human made, a fetish, it had to be a fake illusion, and if something was real, a fact, it had to have been discovered without any human help. The factish explores this false choice. A scientific fact, like the structure of DNA, is completely constructed by human scientists using human labs, human money, and human machines. However, it is also completely robustly real. The fact that we built the instrument does not make the discovery an illusion. It is precisely the same quality of our construction that allows the real entity to show its true colors. By treating the world as a collection of factitious, Latour encourages us to take deep pride in our technical, scientific, and political constructions. We do not need to escape into an imaginary, unmediated world of nature to find truth. We find truth right here in our carefully tended collectives. Let me conclude by summarizing what we listened. First, nature is a political weapon. The old divide between an objective nature and a subjective society was designed to stop democratic debate by allowing experts to use silent facts to crush human voices. Second, we live in a common collective. Human beings are completely entangled with non-human entities, rivers, viruses, technologies, climates. We do not live in two separate worlds. We live in a single crowded collective. Third, democracy must be expanded. True ecology means bringing the sciences into democracy. We must build a new bicameral parliament where humans and non-humans are progressively, carefully, and democratically organized into a shared, stable, and ever-evolving world. Thank you.